They were never supposed to be targets when they left the ship or the base. They were supposed to be sailors, technicians, officers, men and women whose duty put them at the edge of a conflict zone, not in the crosshairs of an adversary's message thread. But in the digital age, the front line has moved from the sea and the air to a small glowing rectangle that fits in a pocket. Over the last weeks, a disturbing pattern has emerged. US service members operating in the Persian Gulf have received direct personalized threats on their phones. The sender, a group calling itself Handala, claims to know who these sailors are, where they sleep, where they go off duty, even what they do in their private lives. And they are saying so in plain, chilling language. The messages arrived over WhatsApp, the same app many use to check in with loved ones, to swap photos, to organize the simple errands of life. According to the group, and corroborated by multiple local sources, Handala posted details. It said belonged to 2,379 US naval personnel serving in the region, listing everything from roles aboard ships to the times and places of off-duty activity. In individual messages, the tone was personal and direct, the content specific enough to strip away the comfortable fiction that war is fought only on distant beaches and battlefields. One of those messages, read in blunt, threatening detail: "Your identities are fully known to our missile units, and every move you make is under our surveillance. Very soon you will be targeted by our Shard drones and Khyber and Ghadir missiles. We will deal with you, the terrorists whose hands are stained with the blood of the Minov school children. We suggest you call your families now and say your final goodbyes." The message was signed Handala and it included a link to the group's online channels. Recipients reported that the number used to send the messages appeared to come from a Bahraini cell phone registered to a legitimate local bazaar, a detail that raised new alarms about how easily hostile actors can hide behind ordinary civilian infrastructure. This is not simply online bluster. The messages were crafted to terrorize, they were carefully tailored to force a psychological reaction. They are the digital equivalent of a man showing up at your door and saying near enough that they know your name, where your children go to school, and when you come home. For service members who already contend with the stress of operating in a volatile region, receiving a direct individualized threat on the same app they use to call home is different in kind and in effect. It is intimate, it is destabilizing, and it undermines the quiet separation many troops rely on between their service life and their family life. Who is Handala? The group labels itself a pro-resistance cyber collective, and Western cybersecurity experts and US officials have long linked it to Iran's intelligence apparatus. Descriptions from multiple analysts paint a picture of a hybrid operation. Part cyber attack team, part leak and propaganda machine, part psychological warfare front. Handala has in recent months published photos, private messages and documents it claims to have obtained from a variety of targets, Western officials, private executives and high-ranking Israeli military figures among them. In several cases, the material has appeared to be genuine and deeply personal, exposing not only the mechanics of military life, but the private patterns and vulnerabilities of those who serve. Among the most prominent exposures the group has claimed responsibility for are materials taken from the phones of senior Israeli officials, including a well-known former chief of staff. The posts showed images and videos described as the product of secret meetings and base tours. They included what the group presented as ID cards and family photographs. The posted material was accompanied by a brazen declaration or your top secret FA. Solicitors, crisis rooms, maps, and even the tiniest details of your command centers have long been like an open book to us. Whether every piece of content was authenticated by independent reviewers or whether some claims were exaggerated for effect is less important than the end result, a calculated erosion of trust in institutional privacy and operational security. Handala's tactics extend beyond doxing and leak publishing. Security researchers and analysts have tied the group to destructive attacks, so-called wiper malware, that have damaged corporate systems. US authorities say they have taken steps to disrupt some of the group's online infrastructure. Just last month, according to officials briefed on the matter, investigators shut down or seized multiple domains and web resources they linked to the operation. The takedowns were described publicly as part of a broader effort to blunt what the US's need. Seized as a campaign of espionage, disruption and intimidation tied to Tehran's eye, It's intelligence organs, but even as authorities disrupted web servers and hosting accounts, the underlying challenge persists. The tools of modern influence and intrusion are decentralized, hard to rid erratic, and frighteningly adaptable. In response to the pattern of targeted messages, the US Navy moved quickly to warn sailors serving in the theater to harden their personal accounts and devices. The Navy's advisory urged all sailors to lock down their phones, strengthen the privacy settings on social media, use multi-factor authentication, and be vigilant against social engineering attempts that could be used to harvest information. The advisory emphasized that adversary cyber actors are actively targeting service members and their families through individualized phishing attempts and manipulative social media engagement designed to obtain credentials, photos, and sensitive data. A simple, practical list of steps to protect accounts and to limit the personal information exposed online. It became urgent guidance for those living within reach of this new breed of threat. The psychological dimension of these operations deserves particular attention. Military planners have long recognized the power of information to shape perceptions, to demoralize, to sow confusion. But what Handala and similar actors are doing is more granular. It targets the individual service member with content crafted to induce fear and a sense of exposure. A direct message alleging that missile units are tracking a sailor's movements does more than convey information about a capability. It implies an immediacy and a breach of safety in personal space. In short, it weaponizes anxiety. For families and communities, the effect is corrosive. Service members relay what they've been told. Families read the messages, social networks amplify them. Even if the technical claim that every single person maimed is under live surveillance is unproven, the perception of vulnerability can alter behavior in ways that hinder operations, strain morale, and force military leaders to devote resources to protection that might otherwise be used elsewhere. This is not an isolated or novel phenomenon anywhere in the world. Cyber actors have long sought to combine breaches of data with narrative pressure. What feels new is the frequency, the brazenness, and the way these incidents intersect with the wider regional conflict that has already shifted conventional dynamics. The recent exposures of sensitive material, whether tied to former Israeli chiefs of staff, to senior officials, or to private citizens, have occurred against a backdrop of active hostilities, diplomatic maneuvers, and a heightened appetite for retaliation and signaling. In that environment, leaks are not only leaks. They are tactical acts meant to shape the political and military contours of a broader struggle. Inside Israel, the fallout from published material has been raw and public. Officials and critics have used the disclose. Serious to argue about accountability, leadership, and strategic choices, one highly charged statement from a prominent Israeli critic captured the fury and disillusionment felt by some. The Prime Minister deliberately deceived the citizens of Israel. He also misled his partners and then proceeded to sell to the public a series of highly theatrical press conferences, a strategic plan that simply did not exist. This government lost the Democrats in the United States, lost a large part of the Republicans in the United States, lost Europe, and missed a golden opportunity to form a military and strategic coalition with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. That voice continued, accusing the leadership of strategic collapse, of arrogance, and of taking the country to the brink without a credible plan to end the war. Those words, raw and repetitive, were shared widely and underscored how cyber disclosures feed into already volatile domestic politics. If there is any silver lining, it is that Teva says he knew vulnerabilities exposed by groups like Handala have prompted institutional learning and urgent remedial action. Militaries and governments are recalibrating operational security guidance, emphasizing the separation of personal and work devices, increasing the use of encrypted communication for sensitive matters, and intensifying counterintelligence efforts to detect and counter social engineering campaigns. Tech companies and messaging platforms are also under pressure to harden verification systems and to work with authorities when credible threats arise. The interplay between private sector platforms and public security is now central to national defense. No longer are platform policies a matter simply of content moderation. They are now components of operational security doctrine. But technical fixes and policy shifts will only go so far against an adversary that blends hacking, propaganda, and psychological pressure in a decentralized, resilient manner. The most persistent vulnerabilities are human. People share, overshare, and trust. They click, they respond, and they attempt to be helpful in moments of stress. That is the social engineering lever cyber actors seek to exploit. Closing those doors requires constant education, cultural change, and realistic expectations about the limits of digital security amid an open society. There is also a geopolitical dimension. Handala's operations do not exist in a vacuum. They are part of the broader ecosystem of proxy actors, state intelligence services, and symptomatic tactics in a larger strategic contest between regional rivals and global powers. That is why takedowns of infrastructure are only a partial victory. The network nature of the internet, the ubiquity of personal devices, and the multiplicity of actors willing to amplify stolen materials or to threaten individuals means that national defense strategies must adapt beyond ship movements and missile defenses. They must incorporate cyber resilience, COM-MEN, unity-level readiness, and international cooperation on norms governing attacks that intentionally target service members off the battlefield. For the individual sailor receiving a message on their phone, though, those lofty strategic considerations are secondary to a more immediate question: am I safe? The answer is rarely black and white. Security officials say that, so far, there is no evidence of an imminent kinetic strike tied directly to these messages. But uncertainty is the enemy of calm, and the messages are designed to breed uncertainty. The Navy's guidance to lock down devices, to tighten privacy on social media, and to be skeptical of unknown contacts is sensible, practical, and necessary. But it also highlights how blurred the line has become between private life and national security. As conflicts evolve, so do the instruments of war. Once, territory and troop movements were the primary metrics of power. Today, the ability to penetrate a phone, falsify an identity, or create a tailored threat narrative can bend a moment of history. The challenge for democratic societies is to respond in a manner that protects citizens and service members without ceding the openness and freedom that those societies cherish. That balance is not easy. Overreaction can militarize everyday life. Underreaction can leave people exposed to harm. There are a few concrete truths we can return to. First, threats delivered through private messaging platforms are now a component of modern campaigns of intimidation and influence. Second, actors who wield those threats are often part of broader networks that combine cyber intrusion, propaganda, and conventional coercion. Third, the defense against such tactics requires coordinated effort, technical, institutional, and cultural, by governments, militaries, technology companies, and the communities that support deployed personnel. To the service members on the receiving end of these messages, the guidance is clear. Take the practice seat. Cal steps to secure your accounts and devices, report threats through official channels, and rely on your chain of command for verification and support. Families and the public, the response should be steadiness. Avoid amplifying unverified claims, rely on official updates, and support service members who must now contend with a new kind of pressure. To policymakers and platform operators, the task is urgent. Build more resilient systems, close the windows that allow threat actors to harvest personal data, and develop rapid, coordinated responses to disinformation and intimidation campaigns. In the end, the core of modern resilience is not merely technical. It is social. It is the capacity of institutions to absorb blows to their information environments, the ability of communities to support those under threat, and the resolve of democracies to defend the privacy and dignity of those who serve. The small rectangle in a sailor's pocket may be a conduit for terror. It can also be a TPE, lifeline to help, to family, and to the steadying force of a professional command that knows how to respond. How well we navigate that tension will say as much about our capacity to defend ourselves in the years to come as any ship, jet, or base.